start with the quote that says, "Beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder," right?
Mhm.
Beauty for me is you being fully confident in your own skin.
Welcome to the Beauty Talk podcast, where we feature how the best medical practitioners help their patients to look better, younger, and healthier. Now, enjoy the show, and here's your host.
Daniel Gao here. I'm the host of Beauty Talk. We feature the top practitioners in health and beauty, both inside and out. I have Madhuri Govindu, a TEDx speaker, licensed professional counselor, corporate strategist, veterans advocate, and award-winning author specializing in trauma, emotional resilience, and identity under pressure. With 18 years of leadership experience across global organizations, including Accenture, HSBC, Google, Cisco, and Radstad, she brings a rare perspective bridging mental health, leadership, career psychology, and human behavior. Madhuri is also a speaker and contributor with the American Counseling Association and is known for helping people separate themselves from chaos without disconnecting their life. She's currently working on 2 upcoming books, You Are Not Your Chaos and Intuition as a 10th Intelligence. So Madhuri, welcome and glad to have you here.
Thank you, Daniel. That was a very accurate introduction, and I'm happy to be here on the show with you.
Yeah, so let's start from the very beginning. What first got you into this field? I guess what got you interested in this field?
I'm glad you asked that. So, it goes back to when I was 19, doing my bachelor's in business management, joined the corporate, moved up the corporate ladder, and everywhere I was invited, I could see a lot of people approaching professionals, approaching and opening their hearts out. So while I was with Accenture as a senior training and development manager, I opened up the floor to a program called Soulful Conversations with Madhuri Govindu. And I had a lot of professionals who walked in, opened up their hearts. So I realized I knew the art of it, but I did not know the science of it. So I kind of dropped my 18 years of corporate career, went back to master's in mental health counseling school, got that done, got a license as a professional counselor in Texas. And that's when I realized I'm going to open up my counseling practice to help veterans, to help professionals, to help everyone who needs me in this space right now. So I knew the art, I learned the science of it now, and that's how I ended up being in this profession.
Got it. Now, your experience spans kind of a pretty broad spectrum. I mean, working in corporate and then dealing with other types of trauma. So, who would you say is the most common type of patient that you work with? Like, what's their background? Who are they?
I do work with a lot of veterans, Daniel, to begin with. Okay, so veterans and veterans' mental health is one of my specialities, but my core specialty in general is trauma. So call it military sexual trauma, complex PTSD, or any sort of trauma that makes somebody get disoriented with the day to day living.
Mhm.
That's what I work with. I work with women, I work with a lot of individuals who have gone through certain traumatic events that have shaken them up. So, trauma is my specialty.
Got it. Okay. And now when it comes to your approach, I mean, your approach covers a lot of different things. So I kind of want to unpack a lot of those things. So trauma informed, I'm not sure if that just means that you're kind of starting from the place of trauma, or what does that exactly mean, like trauma informed?
So, when you say trauma informed, we have a lot of certifications in our part of the world, right? And what we do is understand how trauma works. So, trauma informed care is rather than asking what's wrong with you, a trauma informed approach will ask what happened to you.
Mhm.
So we shift from blame to understanding. And then we create the safety, the trustworthiness, the transparency, etc., to help someone overcome trauma. So that is called the trauma informed care. And I am an EMDR specialist. EMDR is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. That's an advanced form of therapeutic modality that is used for trauma informed care.
Okay. And what specifically goes into that treatment, that, or I guess that approach, the EMDR. I guess what's the like, how does it work, I guess?
Right. So EMDR is a structured psychotherapy. It's designed specifically to help people process and heal from traumatic memories and distressing experiences, right?
Mhm.
So, to explain in a very simple terminology, the brain has a natural information processing system. But trauma can get stuck. It can be stored in a fragmented, emotionally raw way rather than processed as regular memory. And EMDR, Daniel, helps the brain finish processing those stuck memories. And just to give you an example, right? Let's assume when you or I was a child and had gone through a minor car accident, but I knew that the air balloons blew up and the airbags were hitting your face, and you still remember everyone was shaken in the car.
Mhm.
Although you have moved on and your parents have moved on, but a part of you is still scared of a car trip, of a road trip. And that memory gets stuck, right? So it has got 8 phases. One is we take the history and we do the treatment planning, and then we do prepare an individual to build trust, help them explain the process, teach them calming techniques, and then we do an assessment. We identify this specific memory, negative belief associated with the specific memory, and body sensations tied to it. So if we say, hey, do you remember what happened? We don't make them relive that memory, but just narrate the memory. And sometimes we see they have a negative belief that every time I sit in a car, something is going to happen to me. That gets stuck in their system. So through bilateral eye movement, it's called eye movement, right? So if you look at me, I'm looking at the screen end to end. Through bilateral eye movement, we process the memory until the distress is reduced. So the distress, if it starts at a 10, it moves down to a 0. If your body, your chest felt tight and the distress is at a 7, it moves down to a 0. And we then install a positive core belief in them that I am safe in a car. That was a one time incident. It's not going to happen again. I am safe in a car. So that's called installation, Daniel. We install that positive core belief. We then do a body scan to see if there is any remaining physical tension, and then we do the closure. So we return to a calm state at the end of the session. There are a lot of tools like box breathing, which the veterans use. You also have the 5 4 3 2 1 technique. We use those to help them return to a calm state, and that's when we reevaluate them. The eighth step in the process, we reevaluate how is the progress at the start of the next session. So that is EMDR for you, one of the advanced therapeutic modalities, and I love it because I've been using it for my veterans who have military sexual trauma or complex PTSD, moral injury, and it's a well-researched application. It's working beautifully. So thank you for the question and allowing me to answer.
No problem. And when it comes to like cognitive behavioral therapy, I know that's another thing that you include. Is that tied very closely to the EMDR, or is it a completely different type of treatment?
So, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, I would say one of the most widely used and researched form of psychotherapy, right? The core idea behind CBT is thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are all connected.
Mm.
And that changing unhelpful thought patterns can change how you feel and act, right? So there is a situation, there is a thought, and there is a feeling and behavior. For example, you texted a friend and the friend did not text you back. You already have an unhelpful thought, they must hate me. You have a lot of anxiety. So, what we do with CBT is we offer a balanced thought to you. They are probably busy, and that's the reason they haven't texted me. So, CBT works on the thought, feeling, and behavior. It's a very profound question. Where I feel there's a connection between CBT and EMDR is when you're installing the positive core belief in them, right? That's where I see there is a connection. But CBT is a different model which works on your cognitive distortions. Sometimes we have automatic thoughts. Sometimes we have deep unconscious beliefs like I'm unlovable. Nobody loves me, or all or nothing thinking. I either will exercise every day or I'm not going to exercise at all, right? Those are the ones that CBT is used for.
Okay. Now, when it comes to trauma, there's also complex trauma, which you help with. So, what makes trauma complex versus, I guess, I don't know if there's just like regular trauma. I guess what's the biggest difference with complex trauma?
Now, that's a very profound question. What happens is when you have trauma, you do have these memories that are stuck, right? For example, the military sexual trauma. Something happened, you could not talk to anyone about it, and years passed by, you got married, had children, and then you know it's still stuck in your memory. That is PTSD for you. What is complex PTSD? Complex PTSD is a trauma condition that actually develops from prolonged, repeated trauma, especially when the person felt trapped or had no other way to escape. So, if military sexual trauma or any sort of sexual trauma has repeated over a period of time, let's say a family member, a priest, somebody else, and it repeated, that is what makes the trauma a complex PTSD, right? How is it different from PTSD? Regular PTSD typically stems from a single event, like I said, a car accident, an assault, a natural disaster, flood, etc. But complex PTSD comes from ongoing, inescapable trauma, often involving a person or somebody in power. That's PTSD for you.
Okay. And when it comes to, I guess, misconceptions for when your patients come to you, what would you say is the most common misconceptions you hear from patients or myths that they believe?
Myths about trauma. Let me clarify the question. Misconceptions related to therapy or trauma. What are you
Yeah, to
pointing to
both.
with?
Yeah. What's the most common ones for the trauma side and also for the treatment side or the therapy side?
Right. So, one of the major ones for the trauma side is understanding that anxiety or depression, these are very different from trauma. Trauma in itself is different, right? So, one of the myths that I hear is trauma only happens from extreme events. But trauma is about the impact on the nervous system, not the size of the event, Daniel, right? Being chronically ignored, humiliated, emotionally neglected can be as damaging as a single dramatic event and sometimes more so. So, one of the myths I hear is trauma only happens in extreme events. No, it can happen in day to day events as well. When you're constantly humiliated or ignored, that can also lead to trauma. The other myth that I hear is if you don't remember it, it will not affect you, right? The body and the nervous system store trauma below conscious memory. So many people have no explicit memory of early trauma, but they carry it in the form of chronic tension, anxiety, illness, relational patterns, right? So when someone says, hey, just forget it and it will not affect you, it doesn't work that way because trauma is stored below conscious memory. Another myth is, which is correlated to therapy and trauma both, time will heal everything, right? So time alone does not heal trauma or some other aspect that you want to work in therapy. Without processing, trauma can stay encoded in the nervous system, Daniel. So
Wow.
many people are just as affected decades later, sometimes more so as their defenses wear down. So that's one more. I will go with one more for you, which is common, that trauma means you were weak. No.
Mhm.
Trauma responses are normal responses to abnormal situations. You got married to somebody, they were all fine for the first 3 months, and you rushed and you got married, and then you get to know they have a control problem. Even if you give them a gentle feedback, they would thrash things and bang doors and calm down again and start acting normal. Over a period of time, it creeps into you because then you start walking on eggshells. I don't know when is this person going to be loving, or when is this person going to be angry, and I'm walking on eggshells all the time. That
Mhm.
does not mean you were weak. It means the nervous system did exactly what it was designed to do, to protect you, and strength and trauma coexist all the time. Trauma doesn't mean you were weak. It means you got into an abnormal situation which was out of your control. And that's what I write in my book, You Are Not Your Chaos, Daniel, right? This is how in the book, I explain 5 distinct steps on how we can encounter chaos, but we need not become chaos. But coming back to your question, those are some of the myths with trauma and some with therapy that I feel are important to address here.
Okay. And when it comes to unresolved stress or trauma, you talked a little bit about it just doesn't go away over time. But
Hmm.
how does some of that unresolved trauma manifest? Like, what's kind of the most common signs, particularly when it comes to self-care?
I'm glad you asked that question again, right? So, as I hinted earlier, a lot of unmanaged trauma or unresolved stress and trauma, it never disappears. It has to go somewhere. Where does it go? The mind, the body, and behavior all are common storage sites for trauma. Now, what do we mean by in the body? I would say somatic. Chronic pain, if you have a consistent back pain, neck tension, headaches, and no one's getting to figure out why, headache without a clear medical cause, chronic pain, you have fatigue, you wake up and you got a deep sleep rest, there is persistent exhaustion even with advocate sleep. And I also have a lot of patients who come to me who have gut issues, IBS, nausea, digestive problems. The gut has its own nervous system that is connected to stress. I also see that. A lot of them also have autoimmune conditions, some cardiovascular issues, chronic illness. Some are hyper reactive. They get startled with a small sound and they are always on the edge, right? That. And then in the nervous system, in the mind, I give you the 3 effects of trauma, which is the flight response, the fight response, and the freeze response. So you either are always irritable, you have rage, you have aggression, or you have the flight response, which is restlessness, you can't settle down, or you have the freeze response, which is numbness, emotional flatness, etc. And there is also another one called the fawn response. It's called the chronic people pleasing. You're not able to say no. You have lost a sense of own needs and preferences. You become whatever others want you to become, right? Those. And then there is the whole mood, Daniel, depression, anxiety, emotional numbness, catastrophizing, black and white thinking, disassociation, right? Zoning out. Like someone's talking and you're zoned out. Memory gaps. All these are all these are places or sites where trauma is stored.
Okay. And so let's say someone does have this trauma and they're looking for someone to help them with this trauma.
Mm.
But let's say they've never gone through this process before. They don't know who to choose. They don't know what to look for. What's the most important piece of advice you would give to this person as they're doing their search for help? What do they look for? How do they know what to look for? And how do they eventually choose someone who can help them in their journey?
Right. See, the first thing to understand here is when did I realize? What did I realize because of which I'm trying to find help? Awareness is very important. If somebody is offering you feedback, hey, you're zoning out, hey, you're hypervigilant, you gotta take that instance of the feedback and understand I need help. A lot of them feel it's normal. For example, if we had generational trauma, a lot of them just go ahead and feel this is normal for me. And that's the reason they don't even take the step of approaching a trauma therapist, right?
Mhm.
So, what I feel is one of the most important steps, and this is one of the most overwhelming steps, is not every therapist is trauma trained.
Mhm.
General counselors may be well meaning, but may not have the specialized skills, right? So, I feel that you have to look for places like Psychology Today, Headway, and other places where you want someone who is specifically trained in EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, somatic experiences. You also have trauma focused CBT, TFCBT, and look for someone who has education or training in internal family systems, IFS, right? For complex PTSD specifically, you need to look at someone who is experienced with complex trauma. So, EMDR, International Association, Psychology Today, Open Path Collective, Therapy Den, Inclusive Therapists, there are a lot of places where you can go and look for trauma therapists.
Okay, great advice. And how do you approach the educational part? Because I'm sure when someone comes in, they probably don't know what's going on. They don't know much about the process. And so, how do you push that educational component so that they feel comfortable, they feel like they're being heard, and they open up during this process?
A good trauma therapist, I must tell you this, will definitely educate, which is called psychoeducation, Daniel. It's a part of offering some more insights into their trauma. So, in my practice, even working with veterans, a lot of times for so many years, they don't understand why am I feeling this way. So, psychoeducation means giving people knowledge about what trauma is and how it works so that their own experiences start to make sense for them. And I think it's often the first and most powerful intervention because even if before you prepare somebody for EMDR or TFCBT, you have to replace their shame with understanding.
Mm.
And that is when, as you rightly asked, education, and in our psychotherapy world, we call it psychoeducation, that comes into picture. For example, when people understand trauma, they often say, I thought I was crazy. Now I understand I was responding normally to abnormal things. And that shift from self blame to self understanding in itself is very therapeutic. So, trauma is not the event itself, Dan. It is what happens inside your nervous system in response to that event. So we do offer psychoeducation to help them understand, hey, this is how your prefrontal cortex, your thinking brain is working. Your limbic system, which is the emotional brain, is working. This is how your brain stem is working. We do offer all that during psychoeducation.
Got it. Now, Madhuri, I'm sure that throughout your career, you've worked with a lot of patients. I'm sure there's a lot of cases that were probably particularly very challenging. Is there maybe one story that comes to mind of one of those tough cases, or just a memorable case, and how you were ultimately able to get them a successful outcome in the end?
Ah, a lot of them, and I'm
Mhm.
gonna pull a leaf, maintaining confidentiality. So I'm tweaking some facts and figures here just to give you a generic idea of how this could work.
Mhm.
I was working with someone who is a veteran again. I'm going to take this veteran's example for you.
Mm-hmm.
Solid, got into military, took care of parents, adopted an autistic kid, and felt like nothing can break me, right? I am unbreakable. That's the kind of attitude they did carry for a long time. And when they came to me, I could see that hopelessness and fear for the first time. That 32 years of my life, I've never been scared. I thought I'm unbeatable, unbreakable. I am, I'm solid. I'm rock solid, right? And because of a glitch in the system, they got a lot of their benefits taken away.
Mm-hmm.
And for them to receive those benefits was very important, right? No one's mistake, probably not the system, probably not the veteran, but the whole process takes time and things happened due to which they got ripped off their benefits, which means a solid amount of money stopped coming in once they came back from military. And that affected the parents, that affected the autistic kid. And when they came to me, they said, "What's the point of living? Madhuri, what's the point of living?" Because I thought everything's okay and it's not, right? So, how did I help them? And I want to be honest here, it took some time. When someone's in trauma, sometimes they just sit through silence for 45 minutes in the session and say nothing because they are not ready to open up. And that's what I tell my fellow junior associates and everyone who is trying to get into this profession. You have to have the quality of patience because they open up when they want to open up. And it takes time to build that trust with you. So I think for 3 sessions, we spoke nothing much. How are you doing? We don't have a solution. We'll see what to do. But then I think fourth session is when I started to probe them on something known as SFBT, solution focused behavioral therapy or based therapy. They tried to figure out, what else can I do? What are my skills? This whole paperwork and processing is going to take time. What are my skills? How do I navigate from here? And I'm so proud to share with you that overnight they came up with a wonderful gun upholstery business idea, the protective covers for the guns that you sell, because they are well equipped with guns and equipments, and started a small business. I think the government supported them, and it's a blooming business now. So they came back to me, and I'm almost in tears when I'm saying this. They came back to me after 3 weeks and said, "Madhuri, you did it." And I said, "No, you did it. I just was there to ensure that your survival brain does not take over you and you are thinking clearly, because during trauma you cannot think clearly. The thinking brain is literally bypassed. It's not weakness, it's not stupidity, it's biology. Your amygdala becomes really hypersensitive. It starts detecting threat everywhere. Even in safe situations, it detects threat, right? And that's the reason trauma survivors react very strongly to things that seem small to other people, but their smoke detector is set to hair trigger, is what I can tell you. So came back 3 weeks. My business is blooming. My website is up. I'm no longer waiting for the paperwork. Let it come when it wants to come. But I'm such a role model for my parents, for my nation. And I'm helping with gun violence, because at the end of the day, when your guns are protected, sealed, put safe away, that helps a lot of youth and others to not indulge in gun violence. So that is one of my veterans too.
Wow, that's a beautiful story and a wonderful story also.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you
Thank
for
you.
sharing that, Madhuri. I do have one last question for you before I
Sure.
ask. Yep, I do want to point people to your website at madhurigovindu.com. Okay, now last question for you. What does beauty mean to you?
Start with the quote that says, "Beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder," right?
Mhm.
Beauty for me is you being fully confident in your own skin. When you love yourself the way you are, you're glowing internally and externally. And that for me is beauty.
Okay, well, there you have it. Madhuri sharing her expertise. So, Madhuri, where can people contact you, learn more about what you do?
Yeah. So, as you rightly said, madhurigovindu.com, that's my website. My first name, last name, 23 at gmail.com. madhurigovindu23 at gmail.com, that's my email. I do welcome a lot of emails from everyone. I can also be found on LinkedIn. I have a YouTube podcast myself where I invite veterans called Soulful Conversations with Madhuri Govindu. And I do have a book. It just won the International Impact Book Award. And that can be found on Amazon. So when you go to my website, madhurigovindu.com, you have my workshops and everything else listed there. And I can be found through a contact form that I have on my website.
Awesome. Okay, well, thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing your knowledge, and thank you for sharing your message.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you for creating this and having a lot of wonderful people come and talk about stuff that everyone needs to know. So I really appreciate you inviting me over. It's a privilege to talk about trauma and veterans.
Thanks for listening to the Beauty Talk podcast. Any questions, please contact the practice directly with the contact information provided during the show. We'll see you again next time. Bye for now.